Hi, this is Diane, and welcome to DMD Digest. Today I'm going to be talking about the effect of diet and sleep. And sometimes people are trying to figure out, well, what's the connection? But actually, sleep is one of the main problems that a lot of healthcare professionals end up hearing about from their patients. They're not getting enough sleep, they can't fall asleep, they can't stay asleep, and there's a lot of different reasons for that. And one thing that comes into mind is, does it have anything to do with your diet, or does it have anything to do with digestive problems? And the answer to that, of course, is yes, which is why I'm talking about it. So let's kind of go back a little bit and talk about diet in general. And you all know, if you've listened to any of my previous sessions, that I'm talking a lot about digestion issues and nausea and vomiting and constipation and diarrhea and bloating and gas and pain in general. So clearly, all of those things are going to interrupt your sleep. But does it depend what you eat, what you drink? Can certain things make it worse or better? Yes, it can. And one of the things we'll talk about are those components, as well as just sleep in general and what happens during that time, and what else can happen that's related to your sleep. So a couple of things. We know that we go through 5 stages of sleep. And I'm not going to get into this in detail because, trust me, I could spend hours just kind of talking about each stage and exactly what happens and what part of your body tends to heal or be more effective than other parts during each stage of sleep. But for the most part, we don't really need to go into that. We do know that the biological clock that we refer to, also known as your circadian rhythm, that influences so many parts of every single thing about us as individuals. And that part is actually seen in a part of the brain known as the hypothalamus. It's kind of a specific section of the hypothalamus. But what that does, or what we're going to talk about primarily regarding your circadian rhythm, is how different things, especially in regard to food, can disrupt that. So our circadian rhythm is basically our brain's way of keeping us on some kind of cycle. And it comes out to be roughly 24 hours, which works really nicely since we have 24 hours in a day. So things that can affect that are multiple. And once again, I'm not going to go into every single thing, but just to highlight on a few things. For one, we know that light can affect it. So when the sun rises, we tend to waken, be more aroused. When the sun sets, we tend to be a little quieter. Hopefully you start to maybe feel a little drowsy, or at least know that you need to go to bed. And that's where melatonin comes in. And there's a certain part of your brain where melatonin is produced. So that's a component. We know that noise, sounds in general, can disrupt our sleep, whether it's too noisy, or for some people, not any sound can be a problem in regard to them being able to fall asleep or stay asleep. A lot of people sleep with the TV on, or music on, or they have their cell phones or the computers nearby. And those actually can hinder your sleep. The stimulation that you can get from that, not only the sound in general, but also the blue light that is emitted from cell phones and computer screens and TVs, actually impede the ability of your brain to be able to continue to produce the melatonin, which makes it more difficult for you to stay asleep, fall asleep. We know that stress different activities. If you exercise a lot right before you go to bed, that actually, for a lot of people, can interfere with their sleep. You would think it would make you tired, and for some people it does make them tired, but it also is kind of activating because of other things that it produces in your body, kind of awakens that and wakens your metabolism. So when we get to diet, what are we talking about? One thing to remember is the effect that sugars and saturated fats and caffeine and alcohol, all those things have on your sleep pattern. We've actually kind of done some studies and found that eating higher amounts of sugar during the day, having higher content of saturated fats during the day, higher caffeine intake, even like drinking a caffeinated product later in the evening, not even necessarily right before you go to bed, can definitely interfere with your ability to fall asleep and stay asleep. We know that alcohol will definitely affect your ability to fall asleep and stay asleep, which might seem a little unusual because for a lot of people, alcohol can be calming and be sedating. So you would think, well, if I have a couple of beers or a couple of drinks before I go to bed, that'll help me. And you do feel drowsier. But the problem is when the alcohol is being metabolized, and after about 3 to 4 hours, after that effect wears off, you're going to rebound and you're actually going to reawaken and then find it very difficult to fall asleep at that point. We've talked about other things that are could be gas producing foods that will upset your stomach. Definitely, if you have any type of food sensitivities, you would want to be much more cautious eating those within several hours before you go to bed. Eating things that will create more indigestion, more gas, like carbonated beverages, can also impair because it's interfering with your digestion. It is also going to be interfering with your ability to sleep. We talked about sugars, higher fats, things like that. Smoking is another factor because of the nicotine. Nicotine tends to stimulate and wake your brain cells up. However, many smokers that I've run into will often, right before they go to bed, have a cigarette or cigar, something of that nature. So we know that the nicotine in those products actually interferes with our ability to sleep. So things also like eating a large meal in the evening or before you go to bed, or eating more of your daily intake in the evening or before you go to bed, will also often create not only indigestion, but will create heartburn, which will make it difficult to fall asleep and stay asleep. A lot of these things that we've talked about also, besides interfering with your ability to sleep, are also things that increase the inflammation all throughout your body. And I've talked about that in other videos that I've done, where different foods and exposure to things increase inflammation throughout your body. So not even only in your GI system, but also inflammation in your joints, inflammation in your brain. So we know that there actually is so much more of a connection between your GI system or your gut and your brain. And I've mentioned that before in situations like Alzheimer's, and looking at how some of the newer research out there is showing a direct connection between your gut health and Alzheimer's for one, or other types of dementias, as well as mood disorders and anxiety disorders, as well as the influx or the impact of inflammation from higher blood sugar and the impact that has on diabetes, and then that impact on developing types of dementia such as Alzheimer's. So we're seeing this connection. So things to do. For one, looking at what is it? What am I eating? What am I drinking? What are there side effects to that? What could I do differently? Would it be better to alter the time of day when I eat or drink certain things? Would it be better to look at a whole food source rather than a processed food source? What can your body tolerate? Where are you in your own recovery with your own GI health? Are you able to introduce whole foods, raw fruits and vegetables, grains, nuts, seeds, things of that nature? Or do you still need to introduce those very, very cautiously and then kind of build up to that? So those are things that I just kind of wanted to point out. And all of these also are intertwined with, our own stress level, what's happening in the world today, what happens on a day-to-day basis with your work, with your home environment, with your family, kids. So hopefully this was some information about how your diet absolutely can affect your sleep pattern, and looking at other things to do to try to manage that better, if at all possible, trying to manage the stress level. And there's certainly things that we have control of and things that we don't have control over. Our food choices happen to be something we do have some control over. So hopefully this is helpful to you, and I hope that you all, after listening to this, can make some revisions in your life and get some better sleep, because we definitely all deserve that and we need it. Thank you.